Hi everyone, welcome to my cyberspace. We are continuing our project on stroke prediction analysis using Power BI. In the previous video, I spoke about how to get your data set, how to come up with a question, and right now we want to go into like the analysis in details. If this is your first time, do well to subscribe, like, and follow because it's going to really help the algorithm, and it's one way to encourage me and say thank you. Now let us show like the data so you could have a perfect view. We loaded the data already, and in case you don't know, so we say this is a report view, this is the table view. Most of the time when you see a Power BI dashboard, like you're probably seeing something fancy. It takes a while before you would eventually start to build something fancy. The goal of this project is to walk you through the thinking process of data analysis and how to do things different ways, not just like, oh, click on this and you don't even have like a perfect understanding of why it's working. So this is for you to like look into your data in detail. Click on home in case you want to make any changes. You always know you can transform your data. This is the model view. Model view is going to be in subsequent videos when we are working on a data that we are having to merge two data sets together. There's DAX query. So DAX query is like the sort of the way you code in Power BI. It allows you to do more things, like more flexibility. But we are not going to be trying to write much of a DAX query in this project. So let's make it simple. Let's just come back to report view. This is where we want our visuals to be. And remember that we eventually came up with questions initially. And the questions were like, does having stroke vary by gender? Does having stroke vary by resident type? And this is two categorical data. Because stroke is yes or no, which is like we made a categorical data. Gender is also yes or no, made a categorical data. And association is also like, this is one numerical, one categorical data. But one question that we need to ask first of all before we start to even ask all this question is, these questions are bivariate analysis question. What I mean by bivariate analysis question, bi as it sounds, two variables, and so we are combining two variables together, stroke and gender. What of we coming up with a question that is just one variable in itself? And one question that we can ask, or maybe just is maybe how many participants are in the data set, right? Another question could be how many participants do have a stroke. So you can always come to data and say, oh, from here we see that we have over 5,000 record. But how do you do that? You can also do that in Power BI in Excel, right? But how do you do that like through like Power BI itself? And how do we so we want to first of all have a count of how many people do we have in our data set if we want to show that in our report. There are various ways to do that. I'm just going to show us that first of all. So one thing you want to know is we could drop this down. This is how our data, we can view them. Forget about like all of these signs that you see in this data. So most of what is showing here is just showing you that this is a summation sign. It tells you that this is a numerical variable that you can do some additional summation on them. Right here is our visualization pane. So this is the options for you to like the kind of visuals you can run. It might look like a lot, but most time people just use very few ones. So the ones you would most likely use are like the bar chart. So this stacked bar chart, this is in case you want your bar chart to go in this like direction, or you want it to go like vertical or horizontal. So most likely you would just be picking this one, and depends on the view of like your result before you say you want to pick it to go like horizontal. This is the kind of ones you pick. Sometimes you might also want to do like a pie chart or donut chart. Is the same. It just, a lot of people probably in these days they like a donut chart, and we would do an example for like each of these views. And there is a data card. And just going back to like the donut chart and the pie charts, you would mostly want to use a donut chart or a pie chart if your categorical variable levels are like 2 or 3. So for example, you have like gender, which is male and female, but you start to have like things that are a lot. Maybe you have like highly recommended, not recommended. You have like 5 categories. Your pie chart might not be a very great visual to use. So why this data card is like a card to like put in a specific number based off of any whatever you're putting up on it. So you would use this a lot. Another one that you would think you use a lot is a slicer. Slicer is like applying a filter. It's called slicer in Power BI, and this is a table view. Table view is just, you trying to whatever we have here, in case you don't want to show everything in the table in your report, you can use a table view for that. And a matrix is where you want to like do some chi-square approach or something, but we'll go into details. All of these are like an advanced version of the card view, so you probably might not need that. But let's get right into, first of all, how do we like make a count of like the individuals that we have here. So there's few things that we can do. We can use any of the variables. One thing you need to know is that you need to understand your data well enough. So when you want to count everybody, the question is, what do you want to count them with? We can't just, we have a lot of variables here, so we want to count them. So it's best to count them based off of their ID. So you can say ID number 4858588, come here 1, ID number 70336, come here 2, or you can say, oh, female 1, female 2, female 3. You could do that. So you can count on any of the variables that we have here, but it's best to count on a variable that you think there's no missing on it, meaning that there's no missing, like everything is complete. And that's most times when you have your ID, that's where it might be useful. So let's try to count with the ID, but because we want to count, so we are going to use a data card visualization. So imagine I just picked up of the ID, right? I just pick up the ID, like it's just going to pick any visual by itself. So that's not what I want. So I'm just going to, you can take this and delete this away. So you select the kind of visual you want. So I'm just going to select the data card. So this is what it's showing. Sometimes it might show you some more stuff like this, but just bring it down. So what do I want to make sure you are not, right now I'm not clicking on this, so this is bringing out some AI stuff. So make sure whenever you want to pick your particular variable, make sure you are selecting right in this, so that whenever it works, it's going to be on it. So I'm just going to click on the ID, but this is showing me that we have 187 million, but this is not true. So we know we actually do have like about 5,000 records, just like I showed previously. So what do I need to do? I just need to come here, click on this drop down and select count. So there's one between count distinct and count, but most of the time you want to do count distinct. Count distinct is just in case you have repetition on the value. Maybe somebody has like the same ID for some reason, or maybe they were like a customer that they kept repeating itself. This also determines like how you want to count them. So let's say they're asking you to count the unique customers or the unique people that were surveyed in this. So it's not all the time that you use count distinct. So just think about it, that okay, do I want to count the repetitive values also? But this one I will use count distinct. So right now it shows me that I do have 5,010 record. Now the next question is, which I have here, is that's why it's always best to have a question when you're doing analysis, so you can have a direction when you are getting the results. The next question is, how many participants do have a stroke? So if you want to check how many participants do have a stroke, so there's few things I could do. I could create a new data card and just click on this, and I can just click on the stroke. I will use this stroke numerical. So this is 249. And the reason why this would work is because remember that, so what this does is just that this stroke, it just sums up all the ones, and we know that anyone that has a stroke was given 1 already, so that's like technically it. But imagine you have a data set that your outcome variable is not like you have like stroke as 1 and 0, or you have it as no stroke. Because if I try to do the same thing, I try to click on this and I use this stroke category, right? And I use this stroke category, it's just going to show me this is not going to what I want. Even when I click on this drop down, it's just going to count these things. It's showing me something that I don't want, and that's not what I do want. The reason what is showing me here count, so it's just telling me the yes and no, and that's not what I want to do. So let me remove this. So let's even say the question is even saying, okay, let's count those that do not have stroke and those that have stroke, right? So we want to know out of these 5110, like this has stroke, doesn't have stroke. So one way to do that is And let's just take a few steps backward. And remember, I spoke about for the count of the total people, you could actually use like a different thing apart from this ID itself. So let's try to do that. So we could do this. I could try to choose, like, say average. Let me choose something that is a numerical variable, ever married. So although it's showing this, and I can just come here and say count these things, it's still not going to work. So let me just make sure I do count. Yeah, so you see why count would work, and instead of count these things. So you see how intuitively it's like so the count distance is just trying to count the ever married yes and no. That's just two. So that's why a lot of time it's best to use an ID. You could use any variable, so you need to know when it's best to. So this is doing it like two different ways. So now coming back to having to count those that have a stroke. So right now I say it is 249. Another way to do this is to, I guess I want to know those who have a stroke and those who don't have a stroke. So what I would do is I'm going to pick a matrix. And matrix is like in case you want to like combine things together. So most of the time, because this is a categorical data and a categorical data, so I want to count those who have a stroke and those that doesn't have a stroke. So I will choose this matrix, and then I choose this. So this is smart enough when I start to pick things. So I want to pick, that's with the assumption that we don't have this numerical value for like people who have a stroke. Imagine that you don't have a data that has yes, that doesn't have 0 and 1 and just stroke, no stroke and has a stroke. So what I would do is I picked this. Let me remove this again. I picked on this matrix, and we'll see what's happening. So the first thing I want to do is, I know what I want to do is obviously the stroke category. Don't worry about what is happening. So you pick the stroke category. Then the next thing I also want to do is I want to pick so those who have a stroke and those who doesn't have a stroke, right? That's how I want to count that. So then I want to count it based off of the ID. So the ID is, where is the ID, right? This is the ID. So this ID automatically is summing it up, right? So I know that I don't want to sum up the ID. So Power BI is not smart enough to know that you don't want to sum it up, so they can do count these things. So this then tells me that, oh, like 249 has a stroke, which is this number, and 4861 doesn't have a stroke. So if you add them up, it's going to give you this total count. Let's say I want to break this down by gender. For that, I can do this and just click on this gender, and it automatically like breaks it down by gender for me. So you can also switch this around, right? You can switch this around and say whatever you have in your column, take it to your row. So I can say, let's say I want this right here, and I just put this right here, right? So that's in case you want to do it that way, but let's just leave it that way. So most times you think about what your data looks like. So it's saying that for those who have a stroke, we have 141 that are female and 108 that are male, and those that don't have a stroke. So we see that we have more females also that don't have a stroke. So one way to also do this is, let's say we want to then go to this next question that says does having a stroke vary by gender. So we are going to be doing that in the next video, and we are going to try to solve the other analysis. If this video was a value for time, do have to subscribe, like, follow, and share. Ciao.